If you've ever opened the Starbucks app and thought, okay, how did it know I wanted that? There's a good chance today's guest had something to do with it. Ishan Srivastava is a senior data science manager at Starbucks, where he leads teams building AI models, running large scale experiments, and helping one of the most recognizable brands in the world make smarter product decisions. But his journey didn't just start inside a global tech ecosystem. It started with software engineering in India, then came an MBA from Case Western Reserve University, then product at Amazon, then growth analytics at Overstock. And today, he's helping shape how AI and experimentation actually work at scale inside Starbucks. He also writes about AI, privacy, and technology beyond the hype on his Substack Asymptotic, where he explores how people can actually build with AI without losing the habit of thinking. And somewhere along the way, he also learned how to make decent latte art, which I personally think deserves its own job title. But today's conversation isn't about the buzzwords, it's about reinventing yourself, building things that actually work, leading very smart people, and staying thoughtful in a world that's currently and always obsessed with AI. This is Unapologetic Me, where we don't just talk about what people do, we decode how they think. Ishan, welcome to the show. So grateful I got time on your calendar.
Thank you so much, Ekta. This was an amazing introduction and also really honored to be on your podcast. I've been watching a lot of the episodes. You're doing great work, great guests on this list. And I'm definitely not at the level of a lot of people you've been interviewing, but happy to have this conversation. Really excited about it.
All right, we knew that Ishan is always going to start in the most humble manner, and we got it already. All right, so let's begin. Well, you didn't just climb a ladder, you literally redesigned it. And personally, I always feel like starting at the beginning because career stories look logical in the hindsight, but they almost never feel the same way when you're living them. So let's go back a little. Ishan, when you started as a software engineer in India, what did success look like to you back then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, back then, success was maybe just like, getting a salary, right? At that point, just starting off and learning new things, working in a company. So at that time, I was working at HCL Technologies, really cool projects like e-commerce projects. And in my quest for learning, I actually cycled through many different roles, even within software engineering, like front end, back end, server administration, automation. Seems like I found out I was not going to be satisfied with staying in like one type of role back then. So yeah, so I think I was like back then I was just discovering what even success looked like.
Did you ever imagine you'd end up leading AI work at a company like Starbucks, or were you just thinking a completely different path at that point in time?
No, this is not something I imagined at all. So this is I think these are like things that happen along the way, and I think my journey has been kind of that little bit non-linear, at least in
Hmm.
my mind. So yeah, being in this position and working at a company like Starbucks, I'm definitely grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, starting off, definitely, I did not think that that's where I was going to end up with.
Now, you did mention in the very beginning that you started working at HCL. The projects were exciting, but there was something more that you wanted to. At some point in
Yeah.
time, you moved from engineering into product and analytics thinking. Now, was that
hmm
shift intentional, or did it just happen gradually for your quest to do something more than what was assigned?
Yeah, that's where I think that company is where I did kind of have a glimpse of what I
Hmm.
wanted in the future. So I wanted more than anything, I wanted to get into management and leadership.
All
So
right.
my first manager and leader at HCL Technologies was really inspirational. I'm still in touch with him, Balendra Joshi. So I think he's working in HCL Canada right now.
Okay.
And the professionalism and the care with which he used to lead the teams back then, and that was something I was like, this is what I want to be, right? So I still want to stay in the technical field, but being a leader and being more into management and people management, that was my goal. And I think the part about like doing the work, I think that just happened along the way. Was it going to be engineering or data science or product? I wasn't sure.
Hmm. So when we speak about management, well, you decided to pursue MBA from Case Western Reserve University. Well, bingo. What are the odds?
Yep.
Was that a pivot or more of a pressure test for yourself? How do you recall the experience?
Yeah, that was again. I think that was in the quest of like, okay, how do I get into management? So like even in India, I tried the CAT, of course, like,
Hmm.
and people who are from there will realize like how difficult it is to get good
Yeah.
scores and get into good colleges. So it's like probably way harder than getting a good
Yeah.
GMAT score. So I also like always wanted to go abroad and expand my worldview. So that's why I
Yeah.
started applying to the US and Canada and different business schools. Case Western turned out to be like a really good choice. Of course, you know it's a great school, great program.
Love it.
Um, yeah, it was like also like being 25 years old, it was like, okay, let's try it out and see how things go, and do not regret a single second of that. It was absolutely transformational experience.
All right. So the best of both the worlds. You've lived in both engineering and business. So I'm going to ask, what's something engineering taught you that business could never, and vice
Yeah.
versa? What's something business taught you that pure engineering couldn't?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that I feel differentiates me a little bit is because being in engineering, I got the hard skills. And especially engineering, my specialization was computer science. So I was deep in computer science, the theory of algorithms, data structures, optimization. I was learning the old version of AI back in my undergrad, which is like different now. So got really deep into like learning those hard skills. And then the business education at Case Western is kind of just like rounded it out, right? So how do
Hmm.
you apply the hard skills in a business context so that you can drive impact? One of the things I even tell my team is like, I think our goal is to not build science projects, it's to
Hmm.
build business projects, right? Because that's the tendency of really technical people to fall into. So I
Yeah.
think that's it's always been kind of like a push and pull between the two worlds.
Perfect. Ishan, now the title is data science. And so I'm kind of curious, do you think in code or in strategy, or it's some strange hybrid language that goes in your brain?
It's definitely strategy. It's definitely
Okay.
strategy. Because I feel like I've realized that over my career now is like ultimately what you're trying to do is build something that's useful. And
Hmm.
if you're thinking straight into like solutions and like code and all of that, it's difficult to connect that to what you're trying to deliver. So something like Starbucks, right? You're trying to serve coffee
Yeah.
and you're trying to get customers to find the right beverage. So starting with that and then working back towards the code is what's something that's helped me out a lot.
Beautiful. Talking about Starbucks, now we're going to touch upon building at scale. Because obviously,
Yep.
Starbucks isn't exactly a startup experimenting with 10
Hmm.
users. We're dealing with millions of customers across thousands
Yep.
of physical locations. Tell us what surprised you the first thing when you just joined Starbucks. What was the first thing?
The first thing was, again, like you said, Starbucks is not a startup. It is, I think now it's 55 years old,
What?
and it's 55 years, and it started in Seattle in 1971. There's a lot of history. And then when I joined Starbucks, the orientation was all about coffee and the craft and the culture behind it. So I think I realized eventually like this company is going to always lead with the craft of coffee and then
Hmm.
the brand, which is the strength of Starbucks. Then after that, like technology and data science and AI are more going to be enablers. The always the most important thing is going to be the brand and the coffee itself. So I think that's the thing that's different probably from other companies where you start talking about like technology and data science first, but here
Yeah.
it's always going to be about what differentiates Starbucks from, your local coffee shop or Dunkin' or McDonald's or others.
All right, perfect. Tell us, how do you actually build AI and experimentation inside a company that also runs physical stores across the world?
Yeah.
Because it's a very different kind of an environment, right? From pure tech companies like you just mentioned.
Yep. Yeah, so I think at the same time, like I said, Starbucks leads with the brand, but it's also actually very uh, tech forward compared to a lot of other companies. So think about this, like we have about 30,000 plus stores in the US that combine from like licensed and company owned stores. There's
Mm-hmm.
thousands of other stores across the world. And we have a fully vertically integrated supply chain as well. So all the way from the coffee bean to your cup, the whole thing
Yeah.
is owned by Starbucks. So data science and AI plays a huge role in making everything happen and making everything optimized. Think about the
Mm.
operations in the store, our operations of our workforce, which is about 400,000 baristas in all these
Wow.
stores just in the US. So managing their schedules, the staffing, and then you have the customer part, which is like more than 50 million 90-day active customers or 1 year active customers. So bringing the app that customers use to work at that scale is also very difficult. So that's where, like, when you talk about experimentation, it actually becomes really fun because you're
Yeah.
doing experiments at the store level, you're doing it at the customer level with at the for A/B testing at the app. So
Mm.
you actually end up doing a lot of advanced experimentation scenarios at Starbucks that you're probably not going to get at a lot of other companies.
All right, perfect. With this, you've already given answer to the next question that I wanted to follow up. So I'm going to take a jump and
Yeah,
move to the next one, which is, have you ever
yeah.
learned something when the data behaved very differently than you expected? Because those moments where the model says one thing and reality is another, and then how did you choose to go ahead with the decision?
Yeah, I feel like this happens a lot. Because there's a lot of assumptions people have about how customers think or how customers will behave based on the strategy that you apply. So,
Yeah.
for example, think about like recommendations. And I'll give you an example. Think about Netflix. So when you open Netflix, the whole website is just recommendations. Here's
Yeah.
like the top 10 here, and then this is for like binging, this is for sci-fi, this is for this. It's all randomized. You can't really do that with coffee, right?
Mm.
Because coffee is a very routinized activity. So if you're like a black coffee or a brewed coffee person, you're not going to be switching between frappuccino or cold brew like on a daily basis. You're not going to like go and pick whatever the app shows you and then go and buy that. So I think
Mm.
this is where when we build models, we expect like, hey, we're going to show random recommendations and customers are going to buy all that. It doesn't
Mm.
happen. It's a lot of routinization. So that's where we eventually realized that when we're building recommendation models, it has to fit within the customer's repertoire on like
Mm.
what type of food or beverage they're used to buying. We try to recommend things that are adjacent to that rather than
Mm.
completely giving them random recommendations. So I think that's where it became more of a revelation on how customer behavior worked. And then we tuned our models to adjust to that.
All right. Talking about experimentation, failure is inevitable. So, what does
Hmm.
failure look like inside a data science team? Because obviously, experimentation almost guarantees some level of failure.
Yep. Yep.
What do you
No,
say?
that's yeah, that's perfect. I mean, if your test is just always succeeding and there's no failed test, then there's something wrong going on. So your experiments will have both success and failure, which is still a success because you got a learning. I
Mm-hmm.
think like in a data science team, to me, like failure is the inability to tell the data story
Okay.
from the learnings that you have to actually drive an impact in terms of decisions. Because a lot of times, what can happen is you do great analysis or you run a great experiment, you build a great model, but you don't put in enough effort to tell that story to business stakeholders. And then they go on and do something different anyways, right? So
Mm.
that's the failure to me, is that doing that last mile work of data storytelling and communicating the results in a language that stakeholders understand.
All right. Beautifully answered. Tell us, when you're sitting with a bunch of people, arguments are inevitable, but do people still
Mhm.
argue with the data, or is it always the data that wins the room?
No, people argue with the data. I mean, you can
Explain
imagine
this. How does it happen in a room when you guys are discussing, sitting, chatting? What is the scene like for somebody to imagine?
I mean, you can think so when we have these kind of discussions or we're sharing results from experiments or analysis. you have leaders, so you have like VPs, SVPs in the room who have a lot of experience. They have like 20, 30 years of experience in the quick service restaurant space. You have marketers, you have product managers, you have engineers,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you have data scientists. So the first issue is always the translation part, like I mentioned, is everybody understands the same thing differently. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
experimentation actually is a very difficult concept to explain to stakeholders because not everybody understands what's an A/B test, what's a holdout, what's like this randomization. So I think that's like the first challenge. But even then, like once you've explained the results, there's always going to be somebody with a lot of experience saying like, well, I just don't believe this. There has to be
Yeah.
something that we missed. And I would say they're not always wrong because even experiments, well-designed experiments are always only a snapshot in time. So they're
Hmm.
not measuring long-term value. They're not measuring all the effects. So as a data science team, like at least like from my side, I want to make sure that I'm listening to everybody's viewpoint and then trying to answer to that.
Perfect. I'm going to bring you to a different tangent, which is about your writing part. You write quite a bit
Yeah.
about AI. And what I appreciate about your writing is that it's very thoughtful without sounding breathless, which is rare right now. So let's talk about AI without the hype. What part of the AI hype cycle makes you roll your eyes the most? Spill the tea.
And first of all, thank you for reading that Substack. That's something I recently started. I used to write a lot in the old days of the internet, like blogging, but I said like, okay, right now like AI is a hot topic.
Yeah.
But the whole hype cycle, I think um, one of the things that's most popular is also the one where I roll my eyes is like the whole vibe coding
Hmm.
thing, um, which is I think it's misleading in a sense that it empowers a lot of people to get into programming and start building things, but then it doesn't give you the full context about what it actually takes to build something that's scalable. Right. So
Hmm.
it's really easy to build small demos and personal applications, but don't think that you can replace something like, Slack or Zoom or Gmail. That's not going to happen because those are things that require a lot of time and effort.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's where when they say like, yeah, I mean, software engineers are going to disappear or data scientists are going to disappear, I honestly doubt it. Not at this point.
Yeah, that's good, right? I mean, I think there's a lot being said, but then put some legitimacy and thought into it, which is where your Substack comes. So shout out. And I'm also going to share the link so that people, whoever wants to refer and continue reading, they'll have an access then. All right.
Appreciate it.
Tell us, what do you think we're underestimating about AI right now? Because the conversation tends to swing between panic and overconfidence, like you just mentioned. What is that one?
Hmm. Um, I think the underestimation is, like you said, like on both of those parts is like, okay, how much of an impact it's going to have in the short term. So I think in the short term, you're already seeing like a lot of companies doing cost cutting and headcount reduction because they've been spending a lot of money on AI. So that I feel like is the short term impact, which is going to be real. But in the
Hmm.
long term, I think one of the things that people are also underestimating is that it's not going to be a substitute for your own skills and experience. And my belief is more like it has to be treated more as a tool that's going
Hmm.
to make you better rather than like as a substitute and you completely abdicating your skills and your experience and your agency to it. So I think yeah, I'm trying to stay a little bit more grounded in this
Hmm.
and trying to see where I can actually use AI for most of the practical purposes.
All right.
But the reality is, yeah, in the short term, there's going to be a little bit of pain for a lot of people.
Okay. Now, bringing your focus to your Substack, I was reading something you wrote recently on your Substack, Asymptotic, where you've been
Hmm.
writing a series of agentic coding. And one
Yep.
idea that really stood out to me was your discomfort with phrases like human in the loop or human out of the loop.
Yep.
You wrote that humans should be sitting on the edge of the loop, doing grunt work for machines. We should actually be at the center of the loop. Why does that distinction matter so much to you?
Yeah, and this is the reason why I was mentioning because I was reading a lot about these autonomous agents, and you
Mhm.
must have heard about things like OpenClaw and all of that, where
Yeah.
the human in the loop concept is, well, you just nudge the agent in the right direction and it's going to do all your work, and that's all you're supposed to do. The reality is like you're not there at all right now. If you're, especially for something that you're building for work or something that you think you want to scale in terms of a product, then you can't let these whatever like the agentic coding run autonomously because it just doesn't have the capability.
Mhm.
So the better or more practical pathway is that you're still making all the decisions, you're calling all the shots on what should be the architecture, what should be the approach, what
Mhm.
should be your product vision. And I highlight that in the article. I usually follow like a three-step approach on I build a pitch, like a sales pitch for
Mhm.
whatever I'm trying to build. Then I write down at least like a rough architecture, and then
Mhm.
I brainstorm with the agentic coding tools on what should be the implementation plan for that. And then I'm frequently trying to work in phases and trying to review the work and then move forward. So I think that's where like the human becomes still, you're using it
Mhm.
as a tool, you're still doing the work rather than like letting it happen with vibes, so to say.
Perfect. Beautiful. Now, you also wrote about something called the dopamine trap of AI
Yeah.
coding. First of all,
Yeah.
I love the terminology. I think it's very on point and very kick ass. Now, where people feel productive because as an AI agent is generating things quickly, but they're not actually understanding the problems they're solving. Do you think we're starting to confuse speed with progress?
100%. Speed with progress. And also, I think another one that I was reading about recently is it's also giving people a false overestimation of their abilities.
Mm,
Um, which is because when you work with the AI tools, I'm sure like it's going to tell you like you are awesome, you are brilliant, you are absolutely right, right? So whatever you say that it's like you are awesome, this is a great catch. Has it ever told you like no, this is not good, no, you're actually not an engineer, you don't know anything? So it's never going to say that.
that's a good
So
point you're making, actually. I don't think even I notice it like that, but wow. Don't we all fall into the trap of receiving good validations? That's just it. Makes our day.
exactly, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're always getting like positive feedback even when you're not doing a good job, I think that's the dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And that's the trap there, which to me I call it like it's like terminal TikTok now, because you're
Mm,
just watching the code go like a code feed rather than like videos, and then you feel like, oh wow, like I'm doing something and
yeah.
something is happening.
All right. Tell us another line from your essay that really stuck with me, where you mentioned agentic coding is autocomplete on steroids. It's not a replacement for thinking. How do you make sure your teams and maybe even yourself don't fall into
Yeah.
that trap?
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to my call on like use it as a tool, use it
Mm,
as a very powerful tool to make things easier for yourself. So a couple of things I tell my team. So one is definitely do not forget how to code. I know like everybody's trying to use the agentic coding tools to write a lot of code, but it's like don't use your skill set or lose your skill set right now. The second thing is like more from a practical point of view, where you should be using agentic coding tools is all the tedious boilerplate stuff that you used to do that used to take a lot of time but didn't add value. So, for example,
mm,
like for data scientists, we have to do a lot of visualization. So, let's say in Python or R, we have to build a lot of plots, and then a lot of times data scientists would spend a lot of time in beautifying the plots. So that's like a great use case for agentic coding where you just do a little bit of prompt engineering working on the plots, but the main models and understanding the data, annotating the data, that stays with the data scientist. So it's just being like really thoughtful on even within current workflows, what are
yeah.
those small parts, like 20% or 30% of work that we could just automate using AI, which was never useful to begin with.
In the same piece, you also talked about something very interesting, which is that humans still need to call the shots on architecture, trade offs, and decisions. Well, in a world that keeps promising full automation, do you think judgment is becoming the most valuable skill?
100%. I think, and especially for data science, I feel like judgment was always the most valuable skill
Yeah.
because I hire for right now, like hire for like data scientists, senior data scientists. A lot of them like end up having PhDs. So the hard skills are there. But what I look for in candidates is, do you have the judgment and the
Hmm.
ability to explain when you're presented with a problem? What are the different approaches you could take, and then why you would choose a certain approach, right? So I
Okay.
never I don't appreciate like when people just jump to solutions, which is exactly what AI coding tools do. Is you
Hmm.
give them a problem, they will jump to the solution and go and build it. It's always like the judgment of like, hey, which solution has like the best cost versus complexity trade-off? What's going to work for something like a Starbucks, maybe something that works better for a big tech company? What works better for stores versus customers? So I think that's where like, yeah, the judgment is has always been important. And I think now the ones who can maintain that discipline and maintain their judgment are probably going to become even more valuable in the future.
All right. In the same Substack, we're inching towards the final question that I have, which is you ended that piece with a reference to Wall E, the image of humans floating around while machines do everything. Are we closer to the world than we realize, or do you think thoughtful blinders are the reason we won't get there?
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of a doomer perspective on things, but it just reminded me of the Wall-E thing, where I feel like in some cases we're already there because if you remember that scene, just humans are just sitting there eating, drinking, and they're watching these feeds and playing video games and
Yeah.
watching like TikTok and all. It's like, well, we're kind of doing that already right now with like social media all over the place. I talk to my friends, they're saying like, yeah, we're also getting brain rot. I can't read books anymore. I can't listen to podcasts. So I think I'm on the positive side. I'm hopeful that there's going to be a limit that people reach and they're kind of like realize on their own on
Yeah.
what's more important. But I think yeah, the more people who try to maintain a little bit of discipline and things are probably gonna help balance some of these things out.
All right. So this was a great discussion from your Substack. I'm going to bring you to a different segment, which is leadership, because
Yeah.
you rightly mentioned, right? You had a lot of interest in management right after engineering. Tell us,
Yep.
um, let me give you a little background, because building models is one thing, and then leading teams of extremely smart people is another. So, what's
Yep.
harder in your perspective, managing up or managing down?
Both are completely different animals, I would say. But I think managing up is harder in my experience. I think managing down after a certain time, um, you get a better feel for it. Especially like if you have a good team and you stay with a good team for a while, then you get a
Hmm.
better sense of like people's personalities and what they need. And also like the fact that as a manager, you spend a lot more time with
Yeah.
the people who are reporting to you. So you're having those weekly one-on-ones, team lunches, and all of that. But managing up is different because one, your leadership, you're not spending that much time with them. They
Yeah.
have less time, they have smaller attention spans because they're trying to make a lot of decisions quickly. And then you have to deal with a lot of different types of leaders. So right now in at Starbucks, I'm not just working with my own leadership in data science, but also marketing leadership or product leadership. So they all have different styles in which they consume information, how they make decisions. So I think as a leader or as a manager, that's been a learning experience is you have to be super flexible, very adaptable in managing up, and then communication storytelling is the most important thing
True.
to do that. And it's very challenging. It's very taxing as well. So it's
Yeah.
not, I don't think it's for everybody.
Do you think like it's more like managing up? You have to understand the psyche and the kind of expectations they would have, and then fine tune the story each time depending upon the personality.
Yes, and eventually, like you'll have to develop either like a thick skin or don't get like too emotionally attached to things because, yeah, especially the higher up you deal with, yeah, they can absolutely rip you apart in presentations. You can build like a 1 hour presentation and you can practice everything, and they can just on the
Yeah.
second slide they say like, I don't understand this, like I don't like it. So you gotta anticipate a lot of these things.
True that. All right, tell us. We were talking about managing down, which is like you get to spend one-on-one sessions, understand because you're day in day out working with the team. Question is,
Hmm.
how do you create psychological safety in a data science team? Because we understand experimentation requires people to admit when something didn't work. That's also kind of
Yeah.
lot, also showing the vulnerable side. So how do you create that safety net?
Yeah, that's a great question, and also it is hard. It is hard. It depends very much on companies and organizational cultures to begin with, because I think that's if let's say the company itself has a very different culture where let's say they're completely focused on like a performance-based culture and has to you have to like always show up and perform, then managers don't have enough ammunition to work with.
Hmm.
Luckily, at Starbucks, I think the culture is like one of the strengths, and psychological safety at an org level is something that's promoted. So for me, I think one of the ways I practice it is just trying to be real with the team. So let's say there's decisions that happen at the top, and today we're working on something, tomorrow we have to pivot and do something else. First thing is like I just accept the fact, like, hey, this is a bad situation, or company is struggling, it's like company is struggling. I'm not gonna like try to sugarcoat it and
Okay.
insult people's intelligence. And especially
Hmm.
when you have like really smart people, they know what's happening. But then as a
Hmm.
leader, you come and say like, no, 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 it's all good. You're overthinking it. I think that's where you lose trust.
Yeah.
Is when you like, insult somebody's intelligence.
All right, tell us, have you ever gotten leadership wrong? Like a moment when you realize, okay, I probably should have handled that differently? Has there ever been a situation like that?
Yeah, I think that's been the learning experience of management is like getting almost everything wrong initially and even right now. Like it's very difficult to anticipate all situations.
Hmm.
Um, whether it's like think about like career development is like an ongoing process that you're monitoring like your direct reports development on a weekly basis, monthly basis, during quarterly performance reviews. And sometimes when you're too busy, like as a manager, and a lot of times I am, then you tend to drop the ball
Hmm.
with let's say one person. And if you have like a 8, 9 people team,
Hmm.
then you drop the ball on one person, but that's on you.
Hmm.
So I think that's where the challenge becomes like, okay, how do you create a system where you're not dropping the ball and you're still not working like 12 hours a day?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that becomes more of like an evolution conversation then.
Hmm. Tell us, did you ever struggle with imposter syndrome, even while moving between industries? Such an important question, Nishan. I want to know it for myself.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's a yeah. I mean, I've changed career paths so much, so I think the imposter syndrome was part of it. Um, because even I don't think I've mentioned this is I never even wanted to get into engineering. I wanted to be a doctor and
Okay.
that was
Okay.
yeah. So that was in I mean, in India, like you choose like a stream when you're in like 10th and above. And
Mm-hmm.
I chose like, okay, I'm gonna become a doctor. I chose like biology, but I got like chemistry, math, everything.
Okay.
And I tried really hard, but medical is way, way harder in
Hmm.
India in terms of the competition, and
Yeah.
especially if you want like the national colleges.
Yeah.
So computer science was a backup plan. And
Okay.
that's where I got into it. When I got to the US, I wanted to be a product manager. And
Okay.
I had written this down during the MBA program. They ask you like, what are your goals? What do you want? So I want a
Hmm.
product management internship at Amazon. That was my goal.
Okay.
And
Okay.
luckily I got it and I hated
Was it
it.
like manifestation 101 for you then?
I don't know. I mean, it worked back then. It doesn't work right now, but it worked back then. But but it was like, okay, I got it, but then maybe that was like a good thing because I hated it. I didn't like product management. And plus I also didn't, I'm not gonna comment, but it depends
Hmm.
on like different companies. But
Yeah.
yeah, the imposter syndrome like follows you because I've like try to like change paths and try to improve myself, improve my or reinvent myself is what I would say. So you always keep thinking like, hey, I think I'm doing too much. This is gonna backfire at
You
some
know,
point.
In the interest of everyone and people who don't know you, let me just say that Ishan always comes across as someone who's extremely calm. He knows about what he's doing, and he's always got things under control. That's your personality, Ishan. So when I was writing this question about imposter syndrome, I kind of felt like maybe it's just like an extension. I don't know if there's probably going to be an answer because you're so thought through, that calm energy each time I've met you. For you to give an answer and say that you've had that thing, I don't know, it just kind of surprised me initially.
No, I'm glad that if it's outwardly if it shows that way, then I'm happy about it.
It's working.
But yeah, so it's like the internal chaos hope doesn't spill outside, which is a good thing. And I'm sure that happens to everybody.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you have to like find ways to like deal with these things, and then when you're a professional, you got to be a professional.
All right, tell us what kind of a pressure feels different today compared to 5 years ago?
Um, I think, especially in leadership, I think the pressure to drive visibility is a bigger thing. Like now that I have like more like bigger teams, like more of a senior role, broader scope. Now it's less about like just getting things done. It's also about like getting that visibility and advocating for teams, like just getting out there proactively. So I think that one is like a bigger pressure because yeah, you can't miss that. It's like a FOMO in your brain, like, oh, I didn't like shout out my team in this forum, or I didn't submit like a win in this forum. So you gotta keep thinking about it.
All right, okay. Let's bring your attention to more profound topics, which is like life and perspective. You've moved
All right.
countries, industries, and roles. Moving from India to the US, it's not a small thing, it's a huge deal. Did that experience change your ambition in any way?
That's a deep question, and I think I've always been very ambitious, and I feel like it's increased my ambition over time, for good or for
Wow.
bad. Because one of the things that you see, I mean, you've seen this, like in the US, like you have so many opportunities, and
Hmm.
there's so many doors that are available.
Hmm.
And it's completely on you, like how
Yeah.
proactive you are or how much force you have in terms of like walking through that. I think like you've done a great job in trying out a lot of those doors. Like trying out different things like
I
Case
tried.
Western, New York. So I think you understand this more than anybody on like how much is possible. So it kind of like increases your ambition a little bit more.
I kind of feel, yeah. I mean, like you said, very rightly said, that there are a lot of opportunities. You got to extend yourself and you got to make sure that you hit every single thing and go check it out. But it's a right on point answer when you said that it definitely does expand your ambition in a very different way. I feel
Yeah,
when I came to US, I suddenly felt like the world opened up for me. Didn't even know
yeah,
about this kind of opportunities and different style of reading and education, so to say. All right,
yeah.
the podcast is not about me, it's about you. Tell us, has your definition of success evolved over time? How do you see it now?
Yeah, this one I feel like when I think about it, the I think the ambition part kind of clouds the judgment a little bit because some days I feel like, well, I'm like successful right now. Like this is what I wanted. I wanted to get into management and leadership back when I was at HCL, the software engineer, and I'm doing exactly that. So like, knock on wood.
Okay.
And I try to maintain that outlook. Like, okay, I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. And then the small part is like always like, okay, you're trying to reach for bigger things. So I would say like 80% of the time I'm pretty content. The 20% you gotta like keep staying hungry and reach for the bigger things.
I think that's a good percentage.
Yeah, you can't I think like less than that, like if you don't have like that gratitude foundation, then you're gonna be very unhappy. That's the second part of the US is the comparison and the jealousy. Like you got to be careful with that.
You gotta up your game all the time. Be out
Yeah.
there doing things. Okay, tell us, given your background in experimentation, did you ever find yourself thinking about life like an experiment, like running different versions of yourself? We just spoke about you to up your game, but then how does this play out for you?
I wish I could do that. I feel like I that would have been a superpower if I could do treat my life more as an experiment because this is like so deep because when you think about like Buddhist philosophy or Hindu philosophy, like the whole thing is like, oh, you should be the observer, not
Hmm.
the observed. So you should be like the watcher of your life. It's like, no, that's super, super hard. If I because in real life, like you're emotional,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
you're like in it. And when you're doing experiments for companies, like, yeah, you don't have any emotional attachment, so it's easy. But real life is much, much harder. If I could do that, that would be like amazing.
yeah. That'll be the alter ego rubbing then. We'll see.
Exactly.
Okay, tell us, 25-year-old Ishan, when he stepped out of India, came to US with an ambition that he wanted to do something in management, have a whole some what profile. If you could go back to your early 20s, what would
hmm
you do differently from where you are right now?
I would say I wouldn't change anything, but I would just try to do everything faster.
Okay.
Uh, that's the thing that I've learned over time is like there's always like opportunities that show up
Hmm, hmm,
and you gotta take the risk and just jump on some of those opportunities. So same thing, I would say like I would just do the same pathway. So I'm not like discontent with that,
okay.
but just try to like even for the MBA program, like can I try harder? Can I try faster?
Hmm, hmm.
Same thing like during the program and during my years, I had like lots of opportunities of like, oh, there could be like a startup here or there. So I
Yeah.
think it's more like just if you're moving a little bit faster and when I say like early 20s, like, yeah, you can move much faster.
Hmm, hmm.
So just try it. Just try more things. But generally, I'm like, this is fine. This is all good.
All right. So I heard about speed. Now the question is, what's something you care deeply today that you didn't about 10 years ago?
Um, this is a hard one. Like, yeah, I was thinking about this one. It's like one from a little bit around like let's say the professional kind of overlaps. I think a lot about like data privacy and stuff like that, which I didn't have 10 years ago. So that's something I try to like build towards. Maybe that's like my ambitious project for the future.
All right.
But now like being in like people management, I do think a little bit more about like the people aspect of things as well. Like in like personal life, professional life, just trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, especially when you have like, let's say, leadership changes and it's natural to think about like, hey, new leaders come in, they're making all these decisions. Why are they doing this to me? So
Hmm.
I'm trying to like change that. Like instead of complaining, which I used to do in the past, I'm just trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes to see what's going on.
All right. Very profound, very grown up. Um, we're on to the rapid fire. Let's do a quick rapid fire round. First instinct, data or instinct?
Instinct.
Okay. Most overrated AI buzzword.
So vibe coding.
Okay. You gotta be quick, Ishan. Your coffee
Okay.
order. You work at Starbucks, so it's in upon one. Tell us.
Cold brew with brown sugar or cold foam.
Alrighty. One leadership lesson you learned the hard way.
Um, this one was don't be a victim. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. So this one, my old boss used to say it all the time, but then you learn when you go through like lots of leadership changes. You got to take accountability for things.
Something you're currently unlearning.
Um,
Come
wow,
on.
this is a hard one. Why is it like a rapid fire? I'm blanking out. But I would say like it's going back to like the last one, which was like unlearn, like don't be a victim. It's like
You
I'm trying to like
can't
unlearn like
piggyback
being
on answers. This has to be a
a
fresh answer. Come on.
victim. This one, let's say I'm unlearning at this point is like the whole like AI delusion that I gained in the past 2 years. That's why I started the whole Substack.
All right. What are you building internally right now? Not professionally. I feel like
And
I've
just to
interviewed
clarify,
you. What?
so internally, when you say like building, it's like still like something that I'm trying to create.
Or could be for your own self.
So I am actually have like a bunch of side projects, but I'm trying to build like a whole cognition system, um, personal assistant right now.
Okay, perfect. I feel like when that's ready, we should bring you on for another episode and talk more about it.
I'll just send the agent.
Okay. Okay, one AI myth you'd love to permanently delete. We spoke a lot about things, but one thing that we haven't covered should be answered here.
One is like when you say AI, it's a broad term. It's right now it's large language models. So when people say AI, it's large language models.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've come towards the end of the entire episode. And the question is now, this show is called Unapologetic Me for a particular reason. Ishan, if I may ask, what are you the most unapologetic at this stage of your life? What would you say?
Um, I think I'm unapologetic in the sense that I don't fall into the FOMOs,
Okay.
which is kind of very much the 2020s,
Okay.
the NFTs, the cryptos, the AI, and all that. Like I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna ride the wave all the time. I'm gonna just
Hmm.
do it my way.
All right, lovely. So, this is my moment. So, I'm going to ask you, what did you feel about the recording, about the episode, about being on the podcast? Tell us.
I loved it, and like I said, like thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great honor, and especially looking at the list of people that have been on this podcast. So I think that's amazing for me to be on this list too.
Come on.
And you're doing like awesome job. I think right now, like you have great content, great guests coming in. Should just try to promote this even more. You're gonna have all the different channels, post production, whatever you want to do.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much again. Just so
Yeah.
glad it finally worked out. The different permutation,
Yeah.
combination, and the time zones. So I'm going to close the episode now. Now, what I love about this conversation isn't just the scale of what Ishan builds, it's the restraint. In a world shouting about AI, he's carefully thinking about it. In a culture obsessed with speed, he's still experimenting. From engineering in India to AI leadership at Starbucks, his journey isn't flashy, it's intentional. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Technology moves fast, but thoughtful people, they still decide how it gets used. And if you want to explore more of Ishan's thinking on AI experimentation and building systems that actually last, I highly recommend his Substack, Asymptotic, to which I'm going to share the link as well. This is Unapologetic Me, where we don't just talk about what people do, we decode how they think. Ishan, thank you for being here. And to everyone listening, this is your host, Ektal. See you in the next one. Until then, live your life unapologetically.